So welcome to the video companion to Is This Music? And I don't have a title for this, so we're just going to call this Is This a Video? And it is. And it is. So we have Nina Dante back. Most of you who are watching this probably heard our conversation on the podcast, and we're going to be talking about Bethany Younge's Her Disappearance, which we are going to be premiering very soon. So we've already performed it because it's all video filmed and everything. Video filmed. And so we're just going to walk through how we dissected this score and turned it into reality. So, Nina, I'd love to hear first, because for context of everybody, we are across the country from each other right now, and we had to improvise together despite that. And you had the unique experience of improvising with me without ever hearing any of my sounds during the process. So, would you like to start us off and explain how you dove into your start of things?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Justin. I'm really excited to talk about this piece specifically, which we have talked about and recorded in distance together. So it's interesting because before performing this piece with you, I performed it once before, of course, live in the pre-pandemic world. And it really was interesting what a different approach we had to develop in order to make that happen. Because yes, as you'll see on the score, there are, I would say, improvisational elements, like you said. Everything is notated out here, but timing is fluid. And there are a lot of small decisions that the performers get to make together while they're performing, while they're rehearsing, which is wonderful. I love music that works that way. But of course, since we were doing this across the country from each other and not in tandem, I filmed first and you filmed second, there were certain things that we had to plan out a bit more specifically than we probably would in a normal live performance context. So as you'll see in the score, the score is divided traditionally into measures, but there isn't a BPM, there isn't a time signature. There are just duration indications there, and they're usually fluid as well. Like Bethany Younge will say, okay, this should last between 3 and 5 seconds, things like that. So of course, because I didn't want to make your life a living inferno while you were trying to record this, I more specifically made timing decisions and was like, okay, at 5 seconds, this is going to happen. 10 seconds, this will happen. So it took out a bit of that up in the air, fluid quality of the piece. But I do think that given the situation that we were in, it allowed us to be more creative without constantly having to worry if we would catch each other at certain moments. So in the interest of creativity and the blossoming of our unique version as a duo, we planned things out a bit more.
Yes. And that's part of it too, is that part of improvisation is decision making in the first place. It's not just this completely open-ended thing. So it's just the parameters that you decided on that I had to follow, So and that's
I know, fun. I felt very powerful. I am the queen.
You're the queen of this roadmap. And so you can see in the score, just right off the bat, so you have, in this first measure, we have the letter P, and then you have this kind of graphic notation that is for a PVC pipe, which dun da da dun da da dun 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 is right here.
Beautiful.
And so this is what we're singing through. So whenever we see that graphic notation, it means the sound is made through this, right? Dun, 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 dun,
dun. What an entrance!
Right. When I bought that, the I can't remember. I might have already said this in the podcast, but when I bought it, the person helping me at Home Depot was like, "What plumbing are you doing with this?" And I'm like, "It's for music." And he said, "Well, and that was it. So,
I'm sure they've heard it before.
maybe,
We can't be the only ones.
we can't be the only ones.
Yeah.
But we might be the only ones in the St. Anthony Village Home Depot. So you have the PVC pipe with 3 to 9 seconds, so that's the spectrum of time, and that Nina's talking about. That we had to then you had to decide for us here, and then we have the whole spectrum of consonant sounds, and another followed by another time, and that graphic symbol with the slash through it, which means not in the PVC pipe. All right, so that just kind of walks through what you were just discussing. So you decided on the amount of time. How did you go about? I noticed a little bit of not consistency, but a little bit of pattern in your consonant choices. Was that conscious, or was that something that was organically happening in the moment?
That just sort of happened. You know, it was interesting when we were performing the piece. Both of us were outside. I was by my river here, and you were sort of under this structure, but still in the world, still by water. And while I was doing these sections, I tried to just feel as influenced as I could by the sounds around me and the feeling of the air on me. So I'm sure that certain patterns did come out that are unique from versions that I've sung of this before, because I really was trying to be influenced by my surroundings. I think that's part of the improvisatory process. You want to let the world in a bit, whatever that means, wherever you are. So I'm sure some patterns came out, but they weren't thought out, I would say. Right. How about for you?
Well, for me, there was a little bit more, not pre-planned, but a little bit more that I planned during the takes, because I think in general I took 2 or 3 takes, just because I had to kind of get my bearings with wherever we were, versus like what section we were doing. So it's, and we have like the earbuds in, and you can't have it too loud because we have this sensitive mic and everything. So and some of this stuff is quite quiet. So I did get the opportunity to be able to respond and then make decisions in the moment a little bit more than I thought I would, actually. So I caught on to this pattern of a lot of that you were beginning with a lot of SH, which makes sense with your environment around you. A lot of wind and trickling water, a lot of soft sounds around you.
Yeah, actually for these sections, for the sections with the consonants in the boxes, I was actually trying to imagine that the stones under the water were trying to send me a message. Were trying to speak to me from under the water, but you're kind of getting this garbled stone language mixed with the water flowing over them and around them. So that's a bit what was on my mind for those specific sections.
Oh, that's interesting. And then I took that, so I took those soft sounds, and I viewed, again, our interpretation as very kind of human relationship with nature kind of based, this kind of more, the disappearance and the silencing is the voice of the earth, is the presence of nature. And so whenever I heard a soft consonant, I tried in the moment to respond with a hard consonant to counteract it, and try to make as quick of a silencing of what you were doing as possible, which of course wasn't going to work, and it wouldn't have worked in person either, which is, I think, is the beautiful thing, because our instructions are to keep going.
Yeah. And it's it gave the whole piece such a, to me, the effect is really beautiful. And I feel that countering energy coming from you when I heard the mix the other week. So to me, that totally came out in your interpretation.
Good. And then we have this, there's not a lot of decision making in here, but this foot section, which I'm convinced is just because foot sounds really cool through the tube, It
really does.
Because of I think maybe it's because of, the whole, idea of the tract and, overtones and everything. You don't really hear the vowel at all. Mm-mm. It kind of just sounds like this foot, but we are very much both doing a vowel. At least I was, but that kind of serves to kind of get us back on the same tempo again, right?
Yes.
what were your what are your thoughts on this? Then we start kind of blending together on this text. She demanded silence, so I gave her none.
Yeah. It's so interesting. You'll see in the score, the structure of the piece is very, you could call it stark. There are these like huge, not breaks, but there are section changes that are very sudden. So that foot section, it's very rhythmic. It's very steady. To me, it sounds like the churning earth, this kind of the breathing of the earth trying to come through, trying to break through some harshness or this counteracting of human industry. So after that foot section, you get into a section that is text based, and it's just such a beautiful text. It's very powerful, very impactful. This section, she demanded silence, so I gave her none. And for myself, I wanted to really feel that different people were speaking for foot and for those spoken sections. Yeah. That the spoken sections were more human. They were more surface dwelling than these foot sections, or even the p and the consonant sections that we were just talking about. So through there, I was just hoping to be speaking more in a more sort of human, from a more human-centered place, from that perspective.
Yeah. And there's this beautiful, it says the instruction is glissando melodies, melodies here, which on the surface can be, if you take that very literally, it can be a little bit one-dimensional, because then our brain goes, oh, I'm sliding up or I'm sliding down, basically.
Yeah.
But again, it's having that simplicity, I think, unlocks a lot of decisions and everything. And I noticed, that there was obviously different starting points and everything, of how you're going through. But it also, and I don't know if this is the tube or your voice, and I wanted to ask this, there was like this breaking.
Yeah, that's the tube.
Oh, crazy.
It's so crazy. I mean, I heard that in yours too. I don't know if you did. But I chose, so we had different size tubes, so I also don't know if that affects. I think mine is the opening is like 1.5 inches or 2 inches, something like that. So it's much smaller than yours. But I also have a higher voice, so I feel that that's appropriate. But yeah, I think it like kind of brings out certain overtones and makes it sound like a sonic strobe light or something, which I love. I really love that effect. It's beautiful. Yeah. And it's interesting because this whole section, I mean, most of the piece is sung through the tube. There are some sections that aren't, but it was interesting. While I was outside and setting up the pipe, I was kind of like draping it over trees or putting it near the water. And what it felt like, I was like, oh, this really feels like this intermediary object that's trying to facilitate communication between me/humanity and the world. It was interesting. It just felt like some sort of intermediary counselor, just someone trying to help facilitate a communication between humanity and the world. That was how I chose to read that. So it felt to me really quite sad performing this section where I'm speaking such a violent text, such a cruel text, and transmitting it straight out into the world. That felt very emotional for me.
The plants didn't deserve it,
They didn't. They don't. They don't.
No.
Poor angels.
But yeah, there is this otherworldliness that happens with this tube.
Yeah.
As well. Yeah. That you're getting this message from beyond almost. Which leads perfectly into this next section, where we're finishing each other's words. This was the hardest, I think.
Oh yeah.
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 In this, and probably if we were together, it'd be difficult as well. But definitely an energy shift of. I think the rest of the piece felt more responsive, and this felt more anticipatory to me.
Yeah.
I really needed to try to anticipate where you were placing things, no matter how many times I listened to it. You know.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, through the whole piece, you and I kind of are operating as one entity, but I feel more than anywhere else in this the piece here at measure 5 and measure 6, you and I really become this like hollow beyond, we become like truly one entity. So you'll see here that the text, when she tried to speak, I robbed her of her voice. It's fractured between us. So for measure 5, I'm speaking consonants and you're speaking the vowel sounds. And then we flip those roles in measure 6. And of course, yeah, live, you have to be really tuned into each other and just be breathing together and feeling that kind of churning. But in this case, you had such a hard job because, of course, I had to do this all on my own and know that you would need to fit yourself in. So I was trying to imagine you in my head doing your part.
Yeah.
But it's so beautiful the way that it came out. It sounds even more fractured than you could imagine. So there are these kind of like artifacts of human language just like floating and hanging, and you're kind of trying to pick them out and put them together and make sense of them, which I think is really beautiful and unique from any other performance, which really would have happened in this situation.
Right. And that was, I think that was conscious. I think that was conscious. I do remember the first take not working. It was not. I was like, no, that's we got to do it again.
Yeah.
And then kind of just settling into the imperfection of it and settling into, especially when I had the consonants in that second measure 6.
Yeah.
Of going, I'm not gonna catch the words, so let's catch the intention of what's happening, and really thinking of it not as but and really embracing that choking, really.
Yeah, and I love so much that you did that, because in addition to just being so beautiful and unique, these floating artifacts, I think allowing a piece to reinvent itself based on situation and muse and all of these things is what really keeps the pieces alive. And it's interesting because this particular piece, Her Disappearance, has been done many times. It's an incredibly popular piece. Bethany wrote a piece that really spoke to so many people. And, there's a danger of a piece sort of atrophying, because we all know what it's supposed to be like now. We all know what it's supposed to sound like. It's been performed so many times. So I think this was a beautiful opportunity to kind of just say, okay, we're going to let the piece breathe itself into the situation and do what really feels right in this situation.
Speaking of breath, were you constantly hyperventilating? How do you do this?
Yeah,
because I did pick a too large. I was thinking lower voice. I should have a larger diameter here.
Yeah,
and I would probably change that next time. I would go a bit smaller, but yeah, were you I was hyperventilating like crazy.
I was a bit. And then of course, when you're outside for where I was, we filmed. My older sister Manlin filmed me, which was so lovely. It's so fun to collaborate with her in this way. We've done this quite a bit during the pandemic, but we were outside and it was super early in the morning, and I had just woken up and warmed up and got outside, and so you have that like fresh air coming at you. Yeah. So yeah, there was a lot of hyperventilation, but I feel that it helps kind of bring out the ecstasy of this piece, or the kind of otherworldliness of the piece.
Yeah.
Gat.
Cat.
We're having a visitation.
Come here, Percy.
Oh, hi, Angel.
That's Percy. You want? All right.
This is what everyone's really waiting for.
It's true. Hope everybody watching is ready for us to be very distracted, because once Percy decides that he wants your attention, he gets it. So.
Well, you can't name a cat Percy and expect anything else.
No. Right? Cool. So Yeah, yeah. I agree that the breathlessness I did in the moment. I mean, it's like something I wasn't worried about in the moment. Of course, definitely it was in the moment. It was almost fueling. I was like, this
Yeah.
is uncomfortable, and it should be,
Yeah.
kind of thing, a little bit. And also, the spots we picked didn't have as many natural places for me to like stand the thing. So that was part of it too. Is I was kind of lifting it at the same time, lifting the pipe at the same time, and not being able
I
to
was
rest it.
doing that as well, which was
Oh,
interesting because you're kind of bearing that extra weight.
yeah.
Yeah, an added challenge.
An added challenge, which changes the piece. Um, Another, just kind of moving forward. Then another really interesting thing that happened is the continuation of this of finishing each other's sentences in this next section. And I have a feeling we actually marked our measures a little bit differently, but so when I have once I ran blank out of breath, she soon disappeared. Once I ran out of breath, she blank. So the direction here is that where you have blanks, you sustain whatever vowel sound, you know, and whispered, I believe, and then kind of gradually moving and growing, and so that was, yeah, it was a neat opportunity to have space to hear you.
Yeah, and actually, that section is so interesting because you really do end up embodying the text for those four measures. You're just saying over and over again,
Yeah.
once I ran out of breath, she soon disappeared. And those pauses, they're really difficult to sustain because you're whispering,
Yeah.
which takes tons of breath
Yeah.
energy, of course. So you're there trying to sustain these gaps and just running out of air, and it gets sort of stressful and painful as the text implies. So this is so interesting. It's this sort of modern concept of text painting.
Mhm.
There's been text painting since the beginning of music, and here we're embodying that concept in a newish
Mhm.
way.
Which is, I think, a takeaway for any anybody watching this video that wants to maybe get into interpreting new music and might be a little bit dissuaded from the process of things and everything. Is that a large part of it is leaning on things that we've been living with since I mean, like high school for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I remember going, to like whatever solo ensemble. I don't know what other states call it and everything, but it's like my name's Justin Spenner and I'm singing blah blah blah. And an interesting aspect of this piece is text painting. Like, and that never goes away.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
No.
That was really deep for 16-year-old Justin. So,
I was thinking about this the other day. A friend of mine sent me a poem by Mary Oliver, and I was reading it and just, gasping, of course, because everything she writes is so beautiful. And it made me think of the poets who came before her, of course, the poets she loved and poets I love, Keats, and you know, it's all the same thing. It's just our tools have expanded. Or you read the poetry of Lorca and you know that it came from this long tradition that feels traditional to us now, but it's an extension. Like the way that they craft sentences and the sorts of words that they use, they're the extended techniques of
right.
language, and they resound for us. So I feel that way with music, of course. It's all just an extension of what's already been here.
It is. Yeah, the tools haven't changed. It's
Hmm.
there's new tools. But
Yeah,
the ones that were there at first, no, those never changed. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
but what we built did. You know. So now we're at the end of this piece, and I it was a pretty profound thing. I ending it, like, it felt, I didn't feel like moving or responding at all once that silence hit, because it was just it's a wall of, no matter how fragile the piece is, it's still a wall of sound for the entirety.
Yes. Well, and it's also For us, it's the energy just churns in the body. It's all this whispering, it's all this breathing, it's all these melodies coming out of nowhere. It's a highly energetic piece. And then for it all of a sudden to just be gone, to just disappear, you're left a bit stunned.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's where I did appreciate the metered kind of, that was predetermined in our case.
Yeah.
Because it was very, very easy to like be off at the same time, instead of miscuing and one person, goes on for a couple more syllables, which would be fine.
Oh,
too.
heaven forbid.
Heaven forbid, but we had the ability where it was very finite.
Yes.
And I think that it made for really, again, profound experience as a performer. To just feel that like, oh, we did it. And
it's gone. It's disappeared.
It's the title. Yeah.
Again, text painting happening here. The last word in the entire piece is disappeared. And that's exactly what happens. We have this small return to the opening material, and then it's just gone.
Yeah.
As if it never were.
As if it never were. So, thank you very much for walking through this.
Thank you, Justin.
And for kind of going through your process and helping me relive my process. And hopefully this sheds some light on the piece and gives some inspiration for any creators out there watching this video to try something new and just play around, sandbox a little bit. That joy never goes away. So thank you, and everybody, until next time, I guess.
Bye.